Welcome to the latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas. This episode, we're going to be talking about aging. We have some aged folks here on our panel. Judy Donegan, Doug Heinrichs, and Thaddeus Paul Hamus. In the 7+ decades that you've been here, there must have been some important realizations that you've come to learn about life that I'll put in the category of wisdom. You've had some time to think about this question. What have you learned about this life that you consider worth sharing with our viewers? Doug, give us some of your wisdom here.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you a couple things that has certainly struck me. The first is I think coming to understand how little control we have over almost anything in our life. That everything we do, the unpredictability of consequences for any decision we make, the things that constrain our decisions, the things that change in our world, so that we're making plans and we're doing things and we think we're controlling the outcome. And I think it's largely an illusion. We're just sort of deciding to do this and God knows what's going to happen because there's so many variables that we don't get to control. And I think coming to some acceptance of that and seeing it is in some sense liberating, because I think what it ultimately says is the only thing you can be judged by are your good or bad intentions, because what actually happens is mostly determined by things you don't have control over, and that you just need to relax, live your life, make the best decisions you can, and not look back. And the other side of that is we can't predict the future. We can't even know if our decisions in the past were good or bad ones, because we never know what would have happened if we would have done otherwise. Something can turn out terribly, but the alternative may have turned out much worse. And I think there's a human tendency when we regret the past, we know what happened, the path we took. I think it's very easy to idealize the path we didn't take and say, oh, if I would have done that, God, it would have been so much better. But no, there'd have been all kind of stuff and crap that happened on that path too. So I think you just have to accept that we don't know when we did right in the past. We don't know if we're doing right for the future. You take your best shot, think about it as best you can, try to be responsible, but then you let it go. And I think that's probably the biggest single thing that is, as I've gotten older, has been an understanding of the world and a comfort to some degree.
Did you say there were a couple things?
Well, the other side of that would be to not overthink, because I think the other thing that happens, we're in a society that we're prized for intellectualizing, and there's a tendency to think that it's our obligation to figure it all out and to make sure we think all the consequences out, and that we're culpable if we don't do that. And realizing the ultimate impossibility of doing that task, and to just don't try so hard at it. Just do your best, think, you try to think and avoid the obvious stupid things. And you try to do things that are in line with your own values about how to live a good life. But then, if you're religious, it's in the hands of God. If you're not, it's just the wheel of fate, and you just let it go.
Two good nuggets there, Thaddeus. What do you have for us?
Well, I think and thought and thunk about this, and I'm coming up with bupkis, and what I wrote down on my notes is that wisdom itself could be an illusion. And unless, or we can modify that a little bit, if we have succeeded in processing our experiences to make some sense of them. But I would be hard pressed to, stand before the next generation and say, this is a good thought, this is worth having. I'm not sure I can offer that.
Well, that's very profound in itself, that realization that you just came up with, because I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think we can really know.
But I'm not worried about it.
Even better. Even better.
Even better.
Are you still with us, Judy?
I am. I just had to go pull the blind. I was being blinded
Yeah,
by
that
the
happens to
sun.
me with my Western
By the
window
light.
at night.
Yeah.
So very good observations there, both laced with humility. So what's your wisdom that you're going to share with our viewers?
Well, I'm not sure I'm any wiser now than I ever was. I think I can make decisions that are perhaps as foolish as they ever were. But like Doug, I don't look back with regret. And I'm happy about that. I am very happy not to have huge regrets in my life. Advice I would give to a lot of people, and people just slightly younger than I am, is don't think old. And don't let being old be an excuse for not being whatever you can be yet. Don't give up on life. But, otherwise, I don't have a lot of wisdom to offer, I guess.
That's wise in itself. Is there anything about our evolution as a species on this tiny blue planet that worries you when you consider the comfort and happiness of your descendants after you are gone? Doug, I think you mentioned earlier that we really haven't done a very good job of leaving it better. So, anything to add with that?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is what concerns me about the evolution of the species is the lack of any moral evolution. I think we've technologically exploded. We have all kind of capacities and knowledge we didn't have before. But I think our moral sense as a species hasn't changed much since the caves. And the problem is we are now so much more powerful that our evil impulses are much more dangerous. So, we can be so much more destructive. And I think we have not managed to tame that side of ourselves or do anything to make that side of ourselves better. So I think, in a way, the danger just exponentially grows as our power grows.
And I think it's the desire for the power that has overwhelmed the morality.
Yeah, because I think the species started as it's a very hierarchical species, right? I mean, people were always jostling to be alpha, and that was true when we were little packs roaming the hunting and gathering, and it's still true. The problem is it's gotten much more powerful and dangerous, and so that desire to be in charge, to be top gun. And what you're willing to do that gets more and more and more dangerous.
Destructive.
Yeah.
Judy, what do you think about our evolution? And is there anything that you are fearful about regarding that evolution, insofar as the future of your descendants?
Well, I think if I think about that, a whole lot of things worry me. What's going to happen to the climate? What's going to happen to people that are not rich and reactionary? Are we, the thing you can hope for is not with the climate, because that's sort of on its way to a bad place, but that maybe we'll swing back to being less selfish. That's silly. People are selfish, and I worry about how on earth will my grandchildren fit into the world that we see coming. I don't know. I think it's a very big concern. Mm-hmm. So climate, the political situation, how people will be earning a living, all kinds of practical things kind of worry me about it. Not very profound, but
yeah, but pretty dismal, but I think pretty real.
Yeah.
Thaddeus, are you feeling the same way?
Very much. I think that our social and spiritual evolution seems to have gotten badly off track. Now, when I was about 30, I had a recurring nightmare that would wake me up at night. And the nightmare was that we had a full-scale hot shooting war right here in America, not just a hot spot here and a hot spot there, but wherever you lived, you didn't know whether you were going to walk out your front door and go to the grocery store and come back, or you were going to walk out the front door and somebody on the enemy is on the other side of the street and they're going to shoot you dead. And the nightmare of that was that I was at an age that I was too old to cope well with it. Here we are. We are too old to go get our own AK-47 and go out on the street and do guerrilla warfare. We are probably, all of us, dependent on at least one or two chemical substance that comes from the drugstore. What do you do if you're in a war and the medicines that keep you alive are not available suddenly? You know, these are scary, but that was the only part of the nightmare. Now you add just ghastly inequality that we have today, and an even more ghastly portention for the planet. You know, the planet is degrading around us, and everybody's saying, well, I still want to make my money off of oil. And, so it's really scary. And it seems like all of these things are becoming unmanageable at the time at which my agency in the world is diminishing rather than increasing. Mm-hmm. And there isn't a whole lot that I can do about it except get down on my knees and hope I can get back up and pray that the next generation coming up is going to be able and willing to turn this around. I've seen some examples already of young kids, who are like old enough to be our grandchildren, who are getting up in front of a TV camera and saying, we have to do something. And they keep talking. The fellow from the Parkland school, you see about every 2 months, and he is still
David Hogg.
David Hogg. He's pounding, and the little girl from Scandinavia,
Greta.
Thank you. See, you remember names. They're just examples, but then you hear of this school is doing something. If it's as simple as this class in school just planted 400 trees on their school property. And that happened several years ago. And I drive past that about once a week. It's now a forest. So there are kids, and the kids are our hope. And I do hope when I see how good some of the kids can be.
Well, their demographic has a lot better chance than our demographic.
Sure.
Fix it up. Now let me ask you this. This is just a speculation on my part. Was Reagan president when you were having your nightmares?
Well, let's see, 19. Yeah, he was.
That'd be right. Yeah.
I was really scared during those years too. Okay, Thaddeus, I'm going to stay with you on this because I think you're probably the most spiritual of us. But can you describe the role faith, religion, and/or spirituality has in its effect of who you are now?
Okay. Well, as you know, the two of us did not get along well when we were at St. Vincent's. But I am going to quote everybody's favorite teacher, because what he said, and I can quote, is the most important thing that I heard in all of those 4 years. And he said, faith is not going to remove all doubt. but it will make it possible for you to live with your doubts. Anybody remember Vernon saying that?
Yeah, Vernon said that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I have needed to be comfortable with my doubts because I grew up in a church that taught me that everything that I do is wrong and I'm going to hell. Well, I came to the conclusion that I don't believe that God is such a bastard that he would make somebody some way and say, but you can't be the way I made you. So I'm going to say I'm living my life. I'm doing the best I can. And trusting that the other lesson that we got from our religion, which is that God is merciful, more merciful than human imagination can come up with. So there's my religion in a nutshell. I'm doing the best I can, but I do trust that if there's going to be an afterlife, I'm going to be rewarded in it for something because God has more mercy than I have sins.
Okay, Judy, spirituality. Now, Thaddeus was kind of talking about organized religion and how the dogma of our religion had kind of like contradicted his humanity. So let me ask you this, Judy: has it had any effect on you, the spirituality of growing up?
Well, I am no longer religious, but growing up, I grew up in a fairly fundamental Protestant church, different from you guys, apparently. And it had lasting effects on me, not all of them good. And I think that its kind of rigid code of behavior and what we were allowed to do inhibited my life in a lot of unfortunate ways, and maybe still does. But on the other hand, compared to evangelical fundamental churches now, it was absolutely tolerant. It did not call out teachers and librarians in very nasty ways. It was much kinder. And so I think there's some kind of moral sense that stayed with me, even after I was so relieved when I went to college at a college that was affiliated with this church. And I had we were required to take a 5-hour religion course. And I had a wonderful, wonderful theologian who let me understand that, I hope I don't offend anyone, that the Bible is myth. And that you don't have to believe that Jonah was actually swallowed by that whale. So that was a very big relief for me. And I suppose it led to my leaving that church and never going to another one. I think that my sense of morality, spirituality, or whatever probably came from my dad, who tried to get me out of that church. I think regretted sending me to Sunday school, and but was a very tolerant, progressive, uneducated, but very wise man. We lived in Minnesota. We were DFL Democrats, Humphrey Democrats, then on to McCarthy Democrats. So I'm not sure that the church, I think it had some fundamental effect on me. I know it did. But there were other forces at work. And I'm very glad for I kind of think I have a moral, ethical sense, and I'm grateful for wherever that came from.
but not necessarily from the church that you.
No.
Yeah. All right, Doug.
Yeah, well, I grew up like these guys, Catholic, but like you, have abandoned any belief. I'm not religious. Sort of lost my belief in God halfway through high school, actually, and kind of faked it the rest of the way to. I liked where I was at St. Vincent, so I stayed. But it had a profound effect on me, nonetheless. I mean, part of that profound effect was that kind of losing the system that gave me all the answers at a young age kind of drove me into studying philosophy, trying to figure it out because I had to figure out something, right? So that was very helpful, and I think that if there is some kind of God and is some kind of afterlife, it seems to me I haven't the foggiest clue what that would be anyway. So it's no point me trying to figure that out. If there is a good God, all he can ask me to do is try to live a good life as best I understand it, which I'm going to do anyway. So it'll have to be what it is. I think that one of the things that helped me in high school was as I was looking for alternative ways of thinking about all this. And one of our other teachers, actually one of the lay teachers, Jim Siebel, who these guys will know, got me reading Greek philosophy. And one of the things that I was so struck by is that ethics does not have to be part of a religious system. That there is profound ethical thought that has nothing to do with a particular belief in God. Mm-hmm. I mean, Aristotle wrote magnificent things about ethics and without a religious bent to it, and that it's really trying to find something good in ourselves and in our natures. And our mentor, Father Vernon, I over the years have had an ongoing discussion with him until he died about these things, because he always talked about the God within. I don't know if guys remember him alluding to that. And it strikes me that what I really believe is the only God there is the God within, that it's whatever divine spark we can muster up in ourselves and try to nourish and not extinguish, to try to find goodness and to nurture it in ourselves and to try to encourage it in others. And that's the best we can do as human beings.
Yeah, he always did a lot of time talked about the higher power.
Yeah.
Higher power. But I think it's more accurate. It's the I don't even want to use the word God. The goodness within you,
right,
is that power.
Yeah.
As opposed to Okay. Last question. A recent report from a longitudinal study started in the 1930s out of Harvard University concluded that the key to happiness is the development and maintenance of relationships of all kinds. Intimate, casual, familial, neighborly, etc. Our connection with our high school chums, Doug, Thaddeus, and I shared this, and that helped us. And with Judy, I believe you still have a strong connection with some of your grad student mates. But as we grow older, do you find having relationships easier or more difficult to keep? How do you go about nurturing these relationships that you value? I think we were talking about our grandchildren, how we nurture those relationships. But there's a lot more relationships that we have, a lot of times, with people that we've known, since our high school days, and with you, Judy, your grad school days. So, Judy, how do you go about keeping those relationships fresh, or do you at all?
Actually, I have pretty strong relationships that go back farther than graduate school. I have a very good friend that I've known since we were 6 years old.
Ooh.
Her husband just died. I was one of the first people she told. And her husband was a high school classmate of ours. We do not live near where we grew up. She's probably 1,000 miles away. I'm 3,500 miles away. But we have seen each other at least once a year for the last several years. My high school class, it was a small high school, public high school, but we have reunions every year. and I think we like each other better now than we did then. So I think I have maintained a relationship with at least one or two or several people from every stage of my life. And I sometimes wonder, do I not want to let go of people? But I think it's a wonderful thing to have friends from a long time ago. They know your history. They know you. Well, Janet, my 6-year-old friend, she knows my family. She went on vacations with us. I know her family. It's a wonderful history to have. And I'm the kind of person, I even have a friendly relationship with a former husband. So I don't know.
According to Harvard, you should be a pretty happy person.
I am.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, Thaddeus, how do you manage to nurture these relationships? And do you find a source of happiness from having them?
I do. And as I grow older, I find it, less important to be physically present. And I think that's, thanks to email and the phone and the what do you call, these things on our phone that we communicate through.
They're called text messages.
Text message, yes.
Hey, anytime you need a word, buddy, just
little ways that we are still saying things to each other, but I was looking at your faces on my screen, and Doug and Paul, I have known for over a half century. I actually met Doug a year before I met Paul by stepping on his foot. And
left an impression, Thad. You did.
Oh yes, yeah. That's why you walk funny.
That explains it.
But I have realized when I think about you and a number of other people, as you did, Judy, that there are people from just about every phase of my life that I've kept up with, and when it doesn't happen, and as I grow older, it happens with greater. To a month ago, and I was saying, we ought to get together and go to lunch or something like that, and and I say, I've been meaning to go to lunch with so and so, and I said, didn't you know he died? And once again, I hear the echoes, and it's becoming my theme song. James Taylor, Fire and Rain. I always thought I would see you again.
Mm.
And these are the people, that have given me joy all through my life. And I realized that at this phase of my life, one by one, the lights are going to go out. And, that's why it hit me so hard that I have known more people who have passed away than I know who are still alive. And somebody just suggested that I go make some younger friends.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a joy, and I think that it keeps. There's a part of our souls that lives in the friends and the family and the loved ones that is very important to our health.
Doug, I remember at our last reunion, the award ceremony, all the effort that you and Jack had gone through to get our buddy Bill Pelko.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking out over, because I was emceeing it. I looking out over and seeing the look on your face about how worried you were about we get this together because we really wanted to have this thing work out for Bill. And yeah, so take it away.
Yeah, and I can't but agree with everything you said about friendship, all of you. I mean, it's so critical, and I think Bill being a perfect example of a kind of this unassuming guy who's just a real magnificent human being in his friendships and in his caring, and it is critical. And I think the relationships from the past are important because I think at this stage in life you can make new friends, but there's so much about you they'll never know, and they'll see you kind of sort of this diminished you at the end of the story, right? But the people we've grown up with know us in such a rich way and can relate to us in all those phases of ourselves. And I think that's a particularly wonderful thing. I think it should be mentioned here, the other thing that if one's fortunate enough to have adds to one's friendships immensely, and that is a good relationship with a spouse who understands and cares. I mean, it's just, wow.
Right.
But all of these relationships, the long-term ones especially, I think are absolutely critical. And fortunately, one of the good spins off of technology, as Thad said, was it's easier to keep in touch with people who are geographically removed, which is a wonderful thing.
Via text messaging.
Yeah.
Well, Pam, yes, go ahead, Dad.
One other thing just came to mind as Doug was talking about the people, the new friends that you make, that there is so much that they don't know about you from years past. And I flashed back to the luncheon after my mother's funeral. We were playing a tape that she had made in about 1945 when she was a graduate student studying voice. And one of the young fellows who was at the party asked, "Why are you playing this music with this opera singer?"
Wow.
And I was a little bit shocked that I had to explain that the opera singer was the deceased when she was young.
Mm.
It was something they had known her, many of my friends in Baltimore had known my mother as a wonderful raconteur and a very funny lady and all this stuff, but they didn't realize she had a career many years ago as an opera singer. And it never dawned on me that they wouldn't know that. So yeah,
Yeah.
The people you've known all your life are really important.
Panel, this was a great discussion. I really appreciate all the wisdom that you put forth for our viewers this evening and hopefully into the future. So I want to thank you, Thad, Judy, Doug. Appreciate so much to talk about this very important issue for us old folks. And all you out there in Cyberland, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.